else. So they named those things the wanderers, and they wandered against the fixed stars. Now we know the stars do move, and actually the whole galaxy moves, and potentially, we'll get to this maybe later, and maybe the universe in some sense could be said to be moving in a vaster landscape called the multiverse, which we can get to at a certain point. But the planets, you can see them. But what's so important is what Galileo saw. Jamie, if you could show this, would be amazing. Galileo in the winter of 1610 in northern Italy, where he was living, he used a telescope not any better than this. In fact, this might be better because the glass is better, even though it's a Chinese piece of junk, I bought on eBay. But he was able to measure Jupiter and see it, and hopefully we can see it on the screen. And he saw it as a disk. So if you want to see planets, you can differentiate them right now by the fact that they do not scintillate, they do not sparkle, they do not twinkle twinkle like stars do, because they're extended objects that we can actually see through the same and different parts of the atmospheric column. That's what causes scintillation. Like a sniper rifle, they correct for it. They use what's called adaptive optics. That's to avoid like the thermal radiation from the Earth. Like you're shooting something, or elk or whatever, at great distance, there's thermal radiation close to the ground, and then the air is much cooler, and so you get these boundary layers of the atmosphere that causes differential refraction, which changes the color and the position of where the deer is, and that's not good, right? So they have to correct for that using what's called adaptive optics. Anyway, but the same phenomena happens for the planets. They're so big, they're so close to us. They're not bigger than the stars. Stars are massively bigger than any of our planets, including Jupiter, the biggest planet in the solar system. But because they're close to us, they don't appear to be points, and only points will twinkle. So if you want to identify a star versus a plane versus a planet, the planet will be the thing that doesn't move and doesn't twinkle. That's called scintillation. They do not scintillate the same way that stars do. So what Galileo did in January of 1610 is he made a series of observations of the planet Jupiter. He knew exactly where it was. He also invented the tripod. He was the first person to... These things that we just take for granted, like, Joe, do you know that they didn't have clocks back then? There was no clock.
They
couldn't measure
sundials,
time.
right?
They had sundials, but what are you going to do at night?
When was the first clock?
So Galileo tried to invent the first clock. It was actually part of a precursor to the Nobel Prize. It was something called the Longitude Prize. They offered a prize. I don't know if you've ever done any boating or whatever, but when you're out on the ocean, it's extremely hard to determine what your longitude is. It's easy to find your latitude. You just look for Polaris, the North Star. You measure your elevation, and that's going to complement where you are latitudinally on the axis going from South Pole to North Pole on the Earth. But it was impossible to tell where you are east to west from the prime meridian unless you had an accurate way of measuring time. So Galileo was one of the first people to try to compete to win this prize, which was worth, like $1 million back then in those days. And he tried a couple different ways to invent timepieces. But the one that he tried to settle on was this use of the planet Jupiter's moons. Jupiter has 4 moons. I came for that look, Joe. I came for that look. It's just, I can die happy. I got the look. Wow. Jupiter has 4 moons. And you can see them with this telescope. And I'm going to give this as a gift to you for your birthday.
That little tiny one?
You can see it, yeah. If Jupiter's out, you know where to look, and you kind of use a little bit of creative.
How much power is that one?
This one's about 12, 15 power.
So you could do it with 15 binoculars?
Yeah, easily. Yeah, you'll see what you'll see. These 4 moons. But I wonder if Jamie, if you could find...
trying to find something that wasn't great.
If you look up Starry Messenger, Galileo sketch Jupiter. So what Galileo did is he turned the telescope to the moon in 1609, and then in 1610, there they are, Jamie, on the right with those stars.
Look at that illustration of Galileo.
That's his handwritten. And I've seen a friend of mine owns this copy, a first edition of these books, and you're looking at it, and actually...
A first edition? The actual copy that he wrote on?
Not only that, the first edition, but it has his handwriting on it in pencil.
Whoa.
It's insane.
Oh, my God. That's got to be worth $1 billion.
Oh, it's
Jamie, could you please go back to that? Those illustrations?
I had this thing. I think
That's the handwritten stuff?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
So I couldn't tell what this was. That's why I didn't want to bring it up.
Man, imagine having a piece of paper that guy wrote on.
Can you imagine it? So this is a depiction of him showing. So Galileo's the guy with the beard looking down, like Andrew Huberman, at the guy with the
look
white
like
beard.
Andrew
Yeah,
Huberman. Got that beautiful chiseled beard.
That's right, muscular. So he's showing these Venetian senators and because they were in charge of the military budget. So even back then, there was a scientific military connection that he realized because Galileo was kind of a cad. He had a bunch of mistresses. He had some illegitimate children. And
How dare you, Galileo?
He had to support.
How dare you not be pure?
He had to support his brother, who's kind of a no-good-nick. But anyway, the sketches in the lower right show the planet as you will see it with this telescope. And I'll let you know when it comes out. And those 4 little dots, there was an image a couple of pages back, Jamie, that showed the planet as a disk, and then there are 4 stars. And if you go back one, I'll point it out to you. Yeah, see that thing in the lower right, Jamie? It's a Pinterest thing. I don't know if that's yeah, click on that. So here's a couple of, see it says January, well, it's hard to see. It's January 1610. That's Galileo's handwriting. Wow. And Ionis is like Jupiter, okay? So
he had shit handwriting.
Oh, I know, yeah.
I always thought people back then just wrote perfectly with feathers.
Who knew how to read it?
That's
right.
a good point. That's a very good point. So he's got like a doctor's handwriting.
Exactly. So this is his first major book. And in the upper left, you see the sketch of the moon with these giant craters on it. That
Over there,
crater,
Jamie?
yeah. So if you go back,
Yeah, click on it.
So click on that, Jamie.
That's his sketch?
That's his sketch of the moon through this telescope, essentially. Okay. Now the interesting thing is, see that big crater? That doesn't exist.
Really?
It does not exist.
The one on the top?
Nope, the one on the bottom.
That one.
Yep.
Doesn't exist.
Does not exist. Now, why is it there? He was a smart guy. He wasn't like he was an
Right.
artist too, by the way. His father, Vincenzo, was a beautiful musician, a well-known musician. He was a sketch. I mean, this is hand-drawn
Why
sketches. Incredible.
did he put that through?
Because Joe, he wanted to convey not only what it looked like, but how it felt. He was conveying, and when you see it, you'll feel like it's like that big, but if you actually measure it, it's about 10 times smaller than that. But
So he just made it larger than it really is.
to emphasize it. And what's so cool about that, if you want to know, you've had on like my friend Sean Carroll on, he talked about the Higgs boson when he was on the first time. If you want to feel what it was like to discover the Higgs boson, you need 10 to 20 billion euros, and you need a Large Hadron Collider. Okay, good luck. I don't know if Spotify's gonna, hook you up there. But the feeling that Galileo had, you can have that tonight. You can feel what it's like to see things for the first time in human history, because it's your own history. You're experiencing it for the first time. There's no other scientific tool, nothing. Even the microscope, it's not the same viscerally. You will be connected to Galileo 400 years ago